Here's my 30-second story with Guinness. As soon as my sister and I get home for the holidays, we don't even unpack. We head straight to our pub. The bartender already knows our order, Guinness and fries. We laugh all night, catch up with old friends, and walk home with faces sore from smiling. It's one of my favorite nights of the year. That was my 30-second story with Guinness.
Guinness Draft Stout. Please enjoy responsibly. Imported by Diageo Beer Company, USA, New York, New York.
REI Co-op presents a perfect outdoor moment with the perfect gift. Picture this. You're ripping with your favorite person. Bluebird skies, blower powder, and frankly, you're skiing like legends.
So sick. Another lap?
Thanks to REI's curation, from lid to sticks, you nailed the gift.
No way. How'd you know?
Does it get more perfect than that? Give without guessing. Shop in store or visit rei.com.
Dr. Raj.
Dr. Raj. Dr. Raj Dasgupta.
The most interesting pulmonologist in the world.
Welcome to the Dr. Raj Podcast, a show all about empowering knowledge, addressing difficult topics, raising awareness, and being positive. Dr. Raj is a quadruple board-certified physician, associate professor of clinical medicine, and the associate program director of internal medicine residency. He was a co-host on the TNT series Chasing the Cure with Ann Curry, as well as a regular on the TV show The Doctors. And now, here's our show.
This is going to be the Q&A. So I actually told my listeners that I'm going to get a totally awesome wine dude who's going to be on my podcast. And when they found out who it was, they actually sent in little questions. So You promise not to laugh at them. They're kind of simple, but are you going to be okay with it?
Hey, there are no bad questions. I can't say I won't laugh. Some of these questions get funny. They can laugh at me too.
Okay. All right. So here we go. So this is going to be Jesse Katz asking questions that I know you were scared to ask, but now, all right. First question is, how long can I keep a bottle of wine once it's opened?
So it really depends on the wine. Bigger red wines with more tannin and more antioxidants can actually last for a few days. White wines, especially more delicate wines, maybe a day or so. There's a lot of different things out there that you can help continue that lifespan on the wines. There's things like, if you want to get probably the most sophisticated, is the Coravin systems that have a needle that goes through the cork and sparges it with a inert gas called argon, and that leaves a blanket around there, and that can stay good for months at a time if you just want to have a glass. You can even you can get small cans of argon, pull the cork, spray that in, put the cork back, and that will extend it probably another 4 or 5 days up to a week. And so, but bigger reds, especially youthful big reds, and the higher quality usually last longer. So some of our single vineyard wines, my wife and I might have a glass that night, go back to it the next day, and it's even better. Go back to it 2 days later, and it's kind of hit its peak. But that also shows you kind of the longevity of that wine and how long it will age in the cellar as well. But in general, just for trying to generalize this a little bit, a day or two for whites and 2 or 3 days for reds.
Okay. And that's going to be for most people like me that will just take the cork after you take it out and put it right back in.
Exactly. If you have and you can get them for inexpensive online and stuff, the argon gas or nitrogen gas, that will help a lot.
I want to sound a little snooty, so I'm going to go look. Excuse me, do you have the argon gas, wine preserver?
the restaurant world has really embraced it, because obviously they don't want to have a lot of spoilage there, and so argon is used throughout. And like when we're here in the winery and we're trying to protect the wines, we use the same gas here on a larger scale.
So if you keep it more than 2-3 days, are you losing taste, or is there something that's more worrisome?
No, nothing will happen as far as a health concern. But again, what will happen is the wine will start to oxidize.
Okay.
So some of the fruit characteristics will start to go. Some of the aromatics will start to go.
Yeah.
And that's why a wine that has a lot of tannin and antioxidants in it can start to bind to that and be a little bit more self-protective of it, where white wines don't have as much.
Oh, by the way, so we did like the earlier segment. I wanted to comment when you were talking about glucose, sugar. I love that you talked about biochemistry, by the way. That kind of made me kind of excited. You're like fermentation, you suck up the, I'm like, yeah. So
most people yawn when I say something. I saw you get excited. So
all right. So here's another question. And I don't know the answer to this at all. So someone wanted me to ask you, what makes a wine buttery? And what do you mean by buttery? Does it really actually taste like butter? You know what I mean? What does that mean?
So the buttery term got more famous when California was making very ripe styles of Chardonnay. And so a lot of people really like that style, and they call it the buttery style of Chardonnay. And there's a secondary fermentation that happens in wine called malolactic fermentation. And first fermentation, changing sugars to alcohol, is a yeast fermentation. The secondary fermentation is actually a bacterial fermentation that changes acid from malic acid, which you can find in green apples, to lactic acid, which you can find in butter, milk, or something like that. Essentially, all red wines go through this wine because it will help kind of soften up some of that acid. And then it's really the winemaker's style for whether white wines go through it. A lot of Chardonnays do go through it, but the cooler climate Chardonnays with less new oak, you can still have full malolactic Chardonnays that aren't buttery. The warmer areas that are will get a little bit riper, a little bit less natural acidity, and often are paired with more new oak that go through full malolactic. That will give you that buttery sensation.
So am I summarizing well? So it's mainly used when you talk about red wines. Is that correct?
Well, that fermentation happens, but you're not going to have very many red wines that are buttery.
Okay.
It's really where you're looking, and Chardonnay in particular really kind of can bring this out.
Okay.
Where you're getting riper, warmer regions of Chardonnays planted, and having that full fermentation go through, and it's softening up the acid, making more lactic acid, which is more of that buttery acid.
Okay. So here's another terminology that I guess some of the people who went to vineyards talked about, having legs. I personally never heard of that. You know what I mean? So is this something when I go wine tasting, this one has legs? And what does that mean?
So the legs are when you're swirling the glass of wine and looking at the rim, it's how often you see drips of wines going down your glass. And you can look at the separation between those and the more or less of that. It really has nothing to do with wine quality. And has more to do with alcohol content and viscosity of the wine. Also, some of it has to do with what wine glass you're having, the shape of it, all that kind of stuff. So legs are pretty to watch, but I wouldn't take too much concern about them.
Oh, that was a great tip. I love that one. Okay. Yeah. All right. So with that being said, I will always talk about myself that one of the dorky things I do when I get a wine is that I swirl it. I don't know why. It just seems that you should swirl. So please make me a better wine drinker. How to swirl and when should I swirl?
Always swirl. It's a great thing. And so well done. You should be doing that. What it's doing, so when you pull the cork out of that bottle, that wine has been in this very reductive place. Wines are still living things that will evolve throughout time through oxygen incorporation. With a cork in there, you're getting what we call micro-oxidation happening through a very, very small amount of oxygen that's helping that wine evolve slowly. That's why people look to age wines and have wines in cellars. When you are pouring that glass of wine and swirling it, you're macro-oxidizing that wine and giving the wine the ability to start releasing some of these aromatics, in particular for red wine, starting to showcase and soften up some of the tannins. So what you're actually doing is adding oxygen to the wine when you're doing it, but it's also releasing aromatics. So swirl and then smell that wine immediately, and that will be your most pungent amount of aromas coming from there. But what also is really fun, especially with the red wine, but for white wines as well, have a glass, see how that wine opens up throughout the evening.
Okay.
The first glass of wine to the last glass of wine could be drastically different as that wine, what we call starts to open up and more oxygen is incorporated into that wine.
I love it. All right. I'm going to throw in a question I actually wasn't going to put in there, but now I love it after talking to you. So one of my listeners wants to know, is Sideways your favorite movie? Is that mandatory that all wine, makers stuff have to love that movie?
I think Sideways is a great movie just because it's a funny cast and a great storyline. As far as wine, I'm mixed on it because I'll give you a few different reasons.
Tell me.
It certainly gave any story about wine I'm always usually pretty interested in.
Yeah.
The character who hated Merlot,
classic one,
which changed the sales of Merlot domestically.
Oh man.
Yeah, it had a vast shift on it. The thing that most people didn't understand about that was, first of all, he hated Merlot because of his ex-wife. But second of all, it showed you this character who thought he knew, the classic wine snob who wanted to tell you how much he knew about wine. And at the very end of that movie, when he's sitting in the burger spot, drinking this bottle of wine that he had been saving for years and years and years, Cheval Blanc from right bank of Bordeaux, guess what that wine is? Merlot.
No way!
So it was a bit for the wine world, a joke on how little that guy truly knew about wine. So that's why I mix it. To me, it was a hilarious hypocrisy of how naive that guy was, but it did shift what I think is one of the great grapes. I love Merlot.
I'm glad I asked that question then. Okay, we got 4 more questions. I think these are great. One is going to be kind of like a true or false, but give your spin on it. So I was always raised that red wine is room temperature and white wine is chilled. That's why we bought this little mini fridge for our kitchen to put the white wine in there. Is that true or false? And why do we do it?
Well, room temperature is vastly different for depending what room you're in. In general, that's not completely correct. I'd like to serve red wines right around 55 degrees Fahrenheit, which is obviously cooler than your most people's rooms out there. And white wine's about 10 degrees cooler than that, about 45 degrees. The thing to remember is once you bring the wine out of the wine fridge or cellar or wherever you're storing it into room temperature, it will always rise in temperature. So I much rather have the wine a little bit chilled and then let it get up to temperature than a little bit too warm and it will just stay at that temperature. So usually if you do have like a little wine fridge or something, I'd probably just keep it at 55 and you can white and reds. Some of them have sections that you can separate out. And if you're at 55, that's a perfect temperature for reds. Pull it out, pull the cork. The wine should be enjoyable right out of the gates. For white wines, pull it out, maybe throw it in the refrigerator for 10 minutes. It'll drop it down pretty quickly and then pop the cork on that.
You know what? I got so many pearls from that last question. That's awesome. When my wife comes through the door, we're going to change our little fridge setting right there.
Yeah. 55 is a great one.
All right. So this one I did myself because, we have different wine glasses and yes, I'm a little cheap. I'm like, do we have to buy these glasses? And so is the taste of a wine altered by the shape of the glass, or is that taken to an obscene snobby level,
I will say I think the key thing for the general wine drinker is not to have like 7 different glasses for each different varietal and each different shape. I would invest in one set or maybe 2 sets, larger glass for reds and maybe a slightly smaller glass for whites. But invest in it because the key thing is how thin is that lip of the glass.
Okay.
And there's been plenty of studies, a really thick lip, like a coffee cup or something.
Yeah.
If you're sipping that, it's going to skip the front part of your palate, where a thin lip is going to kind of help distribute it to the entirety of the palate. The other part of it is make sure it has a big enough bowl so when you're doing your swirling, 1, you're not getting it all over yourself. But 2, you're able to kind of smell the wine and kind of see it open up and evolve. But the key is the thinness of the lip of that glass the size, shape, yes, there are subtleties of certain varietals that will open up better in certain shapes, but those are really, really subtle. For the most people, just get a really nice set of wine glasses. And one other tip here that I think most people forget, champagne and sparkling wines, pour that in a white wine glass because it's still a glass. And if in those skinny little flutes, it's hard to kind of smell there. So pour that in a white wine glass and you'll actually even enjoy it better.
You know what? When, my wife and her friends have those mimosas, it's always like in the little thin use flutes. Okay, that was a good one.
They do look pretty, so
they do look pretty.
But so does it in a nice little proper white wine glass.
So 2 more. This one was from my wife, and we always kind of like joke about this. So she wants to know, can a cheap wine from a supermarket, can it really pass for an expensive wine? And, we actually went a trip up north. We went to Napa, and they're not cheap wines. And we made a comment like, should we just go to my local supermarket? Because now I feel I know more after talking to you, but can a cheap wine pass for an expensive wine?
That's a tough question because I think there's the wine is expensive for so many different reasons, but mostly because of where it's grown, how it's farmed, and the uniqueness of how limited that crop is. Okay. You think of most other commodities out there, and success is how much volume you're getting per that acre of land. Often our best sites for wine are our lowest yielding because it makes more concentrated fruit, it makes more intense flavors. But also there's a lot of farming costs that go into that, and therefore the fruit costs quite a bit more, and that translates certainly into the wine. I think there can definitely be great value wines at whatever your budget is. But my suggestion would be maybe not look at the largest producers that are everywhere, because usually those are a bit more mass produced. There might be a bit more additives going into there, and maybe look for some of the more smaller producers. And it's what's great about, like, depending on, maybe skip out on your supermarket one time and go to a small little wine shop, let them know your budget, let them know what you like, and say, hey, what suggestions do you have? And you can find these little hidden gems that aren't going to break the bank, that will still be great value wines.
I love it. And for the last question, I want to know, I'm talking to the pro, what is your favorite wine?
Oh, very intentionally, I do not have a favorite wine. I try to drink wines from all over the world, from lots of different regions, varietals, winemakers. So I've gotten this question before, if you can believe it or not. And I always tell people whatever wine's in my glass.
Oh, nice one. Nice and PC, politically correct. I like that.
But I would say in general, we drink a lot of sparkling wines at my house.
Oh, okay.
A lot of great Cabernets from both Napa, Sonoma, Bordeaux, and beyond. And great Pinots and Chards from Burgundy, from Oregon, from Sonoma. So it just really depends on who you're with, the food that we're pairing it with, the time of year. Usually when it's a little bit cooler out, we'll have a little bit bigger cab. When it's warm out in the summer, maybe we'll have our nice, barrel fermented Sauvignon Blanc.
Man, well, Jesse, you nailed all the questions that my audience wanted to ask you, including me and my wife. So I just want to say thank you for taking the time to hang out with me today. I really have, after our conversation, you are down to earth. You are super humble after reading your bio and just talking to you. And you're someone who's just relatable. And
thank you
for coming on our podcast.
No, it's been my honor. And thanks for having this discussion. And, any conversation about wine, I think, is great. Continue to enjoy wine, continue to research wine, continue to try different wines. It's all good stuff. And come up and visit us here in beautiful Sonoma County and get to see the full elements of farming, all the way to winemaking, all the way to paired with some of our great chefs in the local area.
That is the best outro exit ever. And to learn more about Jesse Katz, we're going to put all his information in our show notes. And I truly hope everyone enjoyed these multiple segments of the Dr. Raj podcast. And everyone stay tuned in a few weeks for our next episode and guest.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Dr. Raj Podcast. If you enjoy the show, then please make sure to follow us on your favorite podcast app and leave a rating while you're there. This show is for educational and entertainment purposes only and is not intended as medical advice. This has been a production of MedPrep2Go, and you can learn more at medprep2go.com.